Welcome to Leaders and Laggards.
Welcome everybody to Leaders and Laggards. I'm Jeff Custer, and I'm here with Dave Swenson and Ken Riches tonight. And our topic tonight, I think, is a fun and exciting one, at least for me. And it really I want to talk about fire drills. Fire drills for me, guys, goes back to one of my favorite books I mentioned a couple weeks ago, Steven Covey's 7 Habits. He has a model called the Four Quadrants. And you guys probably remember this model. And I probably put my own twist on it years ago. And just for the people listening quickly, the quadrants are things that are important, not important, urgent, and not urgent. So kind of those 4 combinations. And of course, the model would say, avoid stuff that is not important and not urgent. Don't ever do that. Limit your time on the stuff that's not important and maybe a little bit more urgent. Where you really, the beauty of the model is you want to spend your time in the stuff that's important, not urgent. Dave, those are the things we never quite get to.
Right.
But they're the ones that we really got to figure out how to do. And what keeps us from getting there a lot of times is the last quadrant. And that's stuff that is important and urgent. And different names for that, but in my book, it's a fire drill. And I've been in organizations that are, I'd say, in fire drill mode too often, seen in organizations that are in fire drill mode too often. So I just wanted to use our time tonight to talk about that a little bit and get your guys' perspective on fire drills and kind of what they are and how people listening can work their way through them. So first off, I just wanted to start off just off the top of your head. What do you think fire drills are? Tell me in your words. And so I'll let either one of you start.
I'll go ahead and start. Typically for an organization, they're considered a crisis. And most often there is some type of a deadline involved.
Yep.
And it's, well, I'll let you continue to leave it. That's what comes to mind in the very beginning when you talk about the urgent and important.
Yeah.
The crises, and they're considered problems. And basically there's a deadline involved.
Okay. Dave, what else would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, so I think definitely, we're generally talking about crisis. Unfortunately, a lot of times if you really peel the onion back far enough, they're self-induced.
Right? You're going where I was going to go.
Sorry, I didn't want to steal your thunder.
No, you didn't. Go ahead.
And in my opinion, a lot of times it's seen as an opportunity for the real expert to shine in their mind, right?
Yeah.
And I think that because a lot of times when I've worked with organizations, we talk about, well, what if we started being a little bit more proactive, right? And so back to Covey's point, let's put first things first, right? I point blank, I've had people tell me, well, if we erased all these things, what is it that I would do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You go to the other quadrant we talked about.
That's right.
I think one of the other aspects that's really key about the urgent important is that it really revolves around results.
Yeah.
And it's urgent and it's important because results matter and it is supposed to add value to the organization. And I think as we talk a little further, we'll figure out how do you limit the time you spend there and spend more time where you should be spending time.
Yeah. I was going to tell you guys about a boss I had many, many years ago. And I don't think he did this on purpose. I just think he was busy doing stuff and he would forget to tell the people on his team that there were things that needed to be done and there was a deadline involved with it. And at the last minute, I'd look to my peers and we'd hear from somebody else outside of our organization that was kind of at our same level. It's like, well, are you working on this? And we'd look at each other like, what are you talking about? oh, well, you're supposed to do this, this, and this by the end of today. And we did that so much. It just felt like we were constantly in that fire drill mode. And it was just, and it wasn't because of something we were doing or not doing. It was somebody else in the organization that was causing that. And so not only, then it made it difficult, I think, to try to manage because the boss was telling us to do it. So unless you could get him to change, it was really difficult.
And if you didn't know what was going on, all of a sudden it's just like you're standing there and everyone else has stepped back, and now you've been voluntold.
Yeah, oh, exactly. And get it done. It needs to get done today. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you. You just got to get this done. And one of the things, like I started off with, that when we spend too much time in that mode, we don't get to the things that, things like I get passionate about developing people. I mean, that falls to the wayside really fast when you're doing fire drills, because that's important, but it's not urgent. You can do that tomorrow. Let's take care of the fire drill today. We'll develop somebody tomorrow. Well, tomorrow never comes.
Right.
And, so I think the fire drills, to me, they could be self-induced, and hopefully we have some control of that. They can be caused by somebody outside of ourselves that put us in that mode. And then I think there are just things that truly are crises in organizations that you have to deal with them. So I don't think you can go into this saying, well, let's eliminate all fire drills, because there's going to be some crisis of some kind sometime.
Right.
But I think the key is let's not spend too much time there. So my next question kind of is based off of that. What kind of thoughts do you have on what things do we do to avoid being in fire drill mode? Dave, why don't you go ahead?
Well, yeah, I mean, so this one for me is, again, you think about what the genesis of a lot of fire drills are, and maybe I'm unfair to say that the majority of them are self-induced, but really how you view a situation is going to impact how you act, right? How you behave. And I'm an advocate of behavior-based leadership. So the way you behave is going to tend to lead to the results that you're going to get. And so, for me as a leader, our job is to be consistently, casting vision and living and teaching the vision and values of the organization. And it's also an opportunity to take inventory of people that you have on your team. And if we've got a crisis coming up, maybe one of the best ways that I can lead through it is to really lean on the strengths of the people that I have on my team, right? I don't have to solve everything. That's maybe what the approach that the manager takes. If I'm going to lead through a crisis, well, then I'm probably going to have to, if I'm good, I'm going to lean on my team.
Yeah, very good. Ken, how about you?
Yeah, to me, the key is, and I think it goes towards what Dave said, you have to have the vision. But then what is that? So yeah, you have the vision, but then what do you do with the vision?
Yeah.
You need to have long-term planning. And one of the models that I've learned over the years is prevention, detection, and correction. And where do you want to spend your time? You want to spend your time in prevention. And that's really the whole importance of quadrant 2, which is you are spending time on things that are not urgent, but they're important. They're going to add value. You're going to get results for the organization. And then as you mentioned, Jeff, the fire drills are going to come up, but when they do come up, then you can go into triage mode.
Yeah.
But the key really is prevention and detection. And then when you have that crisis, that's when you go into correction mode. And we used to say that was, you want to spend 80% of your time in prevention and detection and 20% of your time in correction.
Yeah. Kind of the Pareto 80-20 rule that fits so many things. Yeah. Yeah. I just find it interesting. I think we have talked a little bit, I spent a lot of years in the utility business. Ken, you guys know that.
Yep.
And actually, actually have an award that I was part of. We won a national award for our firefighting abilities in outage restoration, and something that our organization was really proud of, because we were recognized nationally as being good at managing fire drills. And so while on one hand, I think that's really exciting, the challenge, I think, for us was when the fire drill's over, how do you switch modes back to, let's go back to the, like you're talking, Ken, the important, not the, the things that are not urgent. And I think that's really a challenge, especially if you're really good at the firefighting. That just kind of gets to be, I think, a little bit your culture. Is you got this culture of firefighting and stuff that I think you just find out that's what we're good at, so that's what we do. So,
Well, and one of the things you mentioned earlier, Jeff, was that if you're always spending your time on fire drills, you're not spending your time on developing your people.
yeah,
And developing your people is what is going to be key to be able to doing triage, but then also to being able to get to the point where you delegate things so that you can spend the time on the things that, especially the further up in the organization you go. So you really need to have that ability to develop your people so that you can delegate the things to them so that they can handle the things that are not important and not urgent for you, but they may be in a different quadrant for somebody that is at a different level within the organization.
Yeah. And I was just, one of the things I'd add about the organization that I've been in is, I think we did I think over time we did a pretty good job in getting to quadrant 2, and that we did a lot of construction work that hardened our system so that you didn't experience that outage to start with, which was a good way to help minimize the crises. So, just don't want to paint the picture we were always in crisis mode. I think there were some good things going on. So that kind of leads me to the third question I had, and Ken, you maybe addressed a little bit, is for the leaders that are listening, what things can we talk to them about to help them lead through crises, so that they get out of that mode as quick as possible?
I think it's triage. I mean, if once you get into the point of where you're in a crisis, you need to pull the. I think that when we go back to some of the other leaders and laggards that we've done, you may have to go into more of a directive mode.
Yeah.
And you pull the people together, you collect the data, you make a decision, you develop the plans, and you take immediate action. And so you have to go into more of that type of a mode. But I think the key to being able to limit that is, you're going to have that, and you can't change the culture necessarily overnight.
Yeah.
But especially as a leader, you need to maybe spend some time documenting where you're spending your time, and take, maybe it's over a week period, and you just document everything that you're doing. And you take that time to put those activities in each of the quadrants, and then you figure out how can you start limiting the things that are in some of those quadrants so you can spend more time in quadrant 2. Yeah. And one of the tools that not only do you need to go through and understand where you're spending your time, but then designing your ideal week is what I call it. It's one of the favorite tools that I've used in the past. And, for like instance, we haven't talked a lot about urgent and not important, but we've mentioned in a couple of our other episodes, turn off your notifications.
Yeah.
If you're having a meeting, put your cell phone on vibrate, or if you're in your office, turn off the ringer on your phone so that you can stay focused on what's important. Yeah. And then just set aside time, whether it's in the beginning or the end of the day, to focus on those important but non-urgent things. But schedule time out to spend time in quadrant 2, and your organization and your team is going to be so much better for it.
Yeah. Dave, what are your thoughts?
So I'm going to start with one word, and then I'm going to elaborate on it a little bit. And for me, I think the word here is consistency, right? And so A quote I like to use an awful lot when we're talking about these kinds of opportunities is Mike Tyson was famous for saying everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think the opportunity here is twofold, right? Last week, even we talked about, maybe performing something like a disc analysis on yourself and your team and understanding what the strengths are, what the opportunities are. And so maybe, through team building activities and through your strategy, you've got some things in place where you're going to farm some things out and let people develop and build your team. But let's be real here. There are going to be crises that come up.
Yeah.
And if you've done some proper risk analysis, you might even be able to pinpoint some likely risks. Maybe there's an opportunity to do some dry runs to really think about how would we handle this if this thing happened. And then maybe those things never do happen. But if you're focusing on the things that are likely to happen, they're probably going to resonate with your team. And you're going to have lessons learned that you can apply when inevitably those fires really do happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been in organizations, Dave, where that ends up getting called almost like a playbook.
Yeah.
You got this playbook that you've thought through and and on previous crises, you've done lessons learned and you've put that in your playbook so that everybody kind of dress rehearsals the playbook. So when the crisis happens, people know what they're supposed to do and you can move through it fairly quickly.
Yep.
In project management space, we call it, you have contingency plans in place and you base that based on the consequences and the likelihood of the event happening.
Yeah. So something leaders can take away from this is, if you don't have that contingency plan in place for things that are likely to become a crisis in your organization, that's probably a pretty good activity for you to do. Yeah. And, kind of the funny thing, Kim, when I think about it, that's a quadrant 2 activity. It's one of those things that's really important, but it's not urgent. If you don't get to it today, you can get to it tomorrow, but it's going to be invaluable when you hit that crisis if you did get there. And I think that's a good example of quadrant 2 stuff. A couple of thoughts about quadrant 4 stuff, Ken, when you talk through that, made me chuckle a little bit because sometimes I joke that my favorite key on my keyboard for my computer is delete. And that's the key I try to wear out because, I don't think I've told you guys this story, but if I have, you'll have to hear it again, I suppose. But like 6 years or 7 years ago, I went I was out of the country for 17 days and I had an administrative assistant and I told her, while I'm gone, delete all my emails. And when I get back, I want none in my inbox. And when I got back, I had none in my inbox. She was an excellent assistant. And after I was back for a couple of days, she said, there's like 60 that I think you should really look at. So she moved them back into my inbox. But out of 17 days, there were only 60 that she thought were even worthy of me looking at.
Right.
And I just remember that. And I think about quadrant 4 of all the stuff that comes at us and how you have to be really aggressive, I think, at just kind of winnowing out the junk. So, all right.
The bad thing about quadrant 4, yeah, I'm thinking about quadrant 3, and the bad thing about quadrant 3 is that they're considered urgent but not important.
Yes.
Right.
And so who makes that determination?
Yeah, I misspoke, Ken. I think I was really referring to quadrant 3. Thanks for helping me out there. Yeah, I mean, the quadrant 4 stuff that's not important and not urgent, hopefully you never find yourself there, although I suspect we probably all do. One of the things that I kind of think of myself as a little bit of a spreadsheet geek. I love a good spreadsheet with perfect formulas and perfect formatting and colored just so, but I have to really be careful and not let myself do that too much because that's quadrant 4 stuff. So I've learned that about myself. I could spend hours making sure it's just so, but it's not any more valuable than if I would have just done it quickly and got done. So
one of the things that really is good about quadrant 4, though, is that those are the activities that are fun.
Yeah.
And they're entertaining.
Yes.
And so there's a time and a place for those.
Yes.
But it really just kind of depends on what you're going back to how Dave started off, where your vision is and your mission.
Yeah.
And And I think it's important for that life balance
Yes.
aspect is to make sure that you have some time. And that's where I talk about the ideal week. You need to have some time for those things that are in quadrant 4, because that's what, especially it might be hard to tell on some of these calls, but for someone like me that's an introvert, that's where you recharge your batteries, because it doesn't, an introvert doesn't mean that they can't be outgoing and gregarious and engaged. It's just that it takes energy, and you have to have a way to recharge your batteries. And that's really, to me, what quadrant 4 is really good for.
Yeah, Dave, what were you going to add?
Well, I actually have a question for the both of you. So, working through this set of quadrants, right? And thinking about the concept of maybe preparing for a crisis, right? Maybe you do some of that risk analysis and start to understand how you could help your team grow, and you could grow yourself as a leader. Are those activities that the two of you would recommend? If you were a leader, would you do those internally, or would you look to outsource somebody to facilitate that for you?
So as in typical project management fashion, I'm going to answer you with, it depends.
Yeah.
So one of the assignments that I had in my career was to do long range planning for a nuclear power plant. And it was, what was really interesting is that I had to understand and learn and teach myself the difference between being truly strategic and being truly tactical. And especially when you talk about urgent and important and quadrant 1, that is pure tactical. You're living in the moment and you're having to deal with it. Being able to switch to being strategic and having more of that long range and long-term planning, I think so the answer is it depends. If you are always tactical and you don't have that skill set, then I think that it's important to have somebody that can come in and help you with having and I spent interesting you say this, my day today was spent for one of the organizations I work in. This was our quarterly planning day. Right. So we started off by reviewing our 3-year plan, our core values, our marketing strategy, our vision, and saying, is it still good? Okay. Then we went to the 1-year plan. How are we doing on that? And then we went in and reviewed what our results for our quarterly. This happens to be, we're using the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, in this organization. And so we went through and reviewed our rocks. And then as we were going through all that, we're putting all the issues up on the board, and they were saying, is it short-term, long-term? So if you don't have the capability or the skill set to be able to differentiate strategic and tactical, then I think you bring somebody in. But once you have that mindset, then I think you can do it internally.
Yeah, and I think, Dave, I don't know, maybe say the same thing as Ken. Maybe my twist on it would be, do you think that how well do you think you understand what your blind spots might be? I just think of a team I led one time, and I knew we were weak on stuff that I know you two guys are excellent at, on kind of some more of the hardcore process improvement type stuff. We just didn't have anybody on the team that really was well versed in those things, and I knew that. So if we needed to work on stuff on that particular team, I think I would say, Dave, boy, one of you guys would have been invaluable when we were trying to go through that exercise.
Right.
If I had somebody on the team with some of those skills, then maybe I would say, oh, I don't know if I need that quite as much. So Ken, I think maybe I'm saying probably the same thing as you, but just kind of look at it as how well do you understand probably your strengths and weaknesses and what your potential blind spots. I always think it's kind of weird to say how well you understand a blind spot, because if it's truly blind, you don't know.
But if you're doing strategic planning properly, you're looking at those opportunities and threats, the other of the strengths and weaknesses, right? The whole SWOT model.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to eliminate your blind spots by identifying your opportunities and threats.
Yeah.
And that goes right back to what Dave said, risk analysis, and that, it all comes full circle.
Yeah.
So I was just curious because I've done it both ways, right? I've been in an organization where we led the exercises internally. And then later on, I was able to take part in exercises that were facilitated by an offsite group. And the facilitator did a wonderful job. I can't remember her name offhand, but it was a unique experience because she brought things to the table that, it was kind of, we always talk about you're doing process improvement, and sometimes you need that outside set of eyes because you're typically going to say, well, or think about this is how we do these things within these four walls. And it was true, right? When we went through and did the risk analysis and the crisis management kind of topics, having somebody facilitate, she asked questions that we probably never would have asked ourselves.
Yep.
It's the beauty of having an unbiased opinion come in, and they don't have skin in the game. It truly is unbiased, and they're looking at it with a whole different set of lenses.
Yeah, and Dave, I mean, one experience I had that makes me suspicious of bringing somebody in, is you get some of these big consulting companies.
Yep.
And the purpose that they're brought in, when you get right down to the bottom line, is the bottom line. And they're tasked with squeezing the lemon just a little more. And I think my experience has been they promise the world and then collect their big paycheck, they leave, and they leave people in the organization holding the bag, having to deliver on something so I've been through that enough where, and I know that's not what you're describing, but I've seen that happen where I think people could take that in that, let's get a consultant in and they can help us solve these problems. Just, I'm a little wary of it, and I want to make sure I understand really well. I love your thoughts about somebody who comes in and really their role is to just ask questions that we didn't think of.
Yep. Back to our coaching conversation from last week. And so I kind of ended the conversation the same way there. Know what you should be looking for. Yep.
Yeah. Their role isn't to go back to senior leadership and say, here, we're saving you this many millions of dollars. Because then they've got different skin in the game.
Right.
Well, what you're both describing to me, I like to keep things simple sometimes, is you're describing a really good facilitator.
Yes.
So they're coming in and they're doing a quick hit. They don't have, they're not looking to make a career out of helping you. They're coming in, they're working on one of their specialties, which is facilitation. And they're asking the questions and they're observing what people are doing to make sure that everyone gets it out on the table. But the organization with a good facilitator is making their own decisions and reaching their own conclusions.
Yeah,
that's right.
Very good. Well, I was kind of thinking about when we started talking about mostly quadrant one, and we ended up having a really great discussion about all four quadrants. I just would add, I don't have this anymore, but for years in my office and my bulletin board, I had the four quadrants on posted. So I looked at it every day. And Ken, going back to one of your comments is, I was always trying to check myself. Where are you at? Make sure you're not spending too much time. So that's probably my final word. How about you guys? Any final words here as we wrap things up for the night?
I guess my final word would be, if you're going to use these quadrants, maybe do a little bit of research into the book, because there's a lot of good points in the book. This is only one of the habits, right?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and I guess mine would be is, if you're in quadrant 2, you're focused on opportunities. If you're in quadrant 1, you're focusing on problems. So the more time you can spend on opportunities, the fewer problems you're going to have.
Oh, very good. Well, once again, just like week after week, I really appreciate your insight and your experience that you guys bring to these topics. It's I learn something every week, and hopefully the people listening learn as well. So thank you both for your contributions tonight, and we'll wrap this up for this week's episode of Leaders and Laggards.
Thanks for watching, and remember, leadership matters.